She stood in golden light while they auctioned her dignity with laughter and coins. 23 years old, unmated, unwanted, until the Alpha King's world shattered the moment their hands touched. What erupted wasn't a bond. It was something ancient, violent, and utterly wrong. Something that forced Alphas to their knees and made the air itself scream. They called her a mistake, a half-blood abomination who couldn't even shift. But when that unstable power detonated between them, the king didn't step back. He stepped closer. And in that moment, everyone realized he hadn't chosen his mate. He'd bound himself to the one thing that could destroy them all. Stay until the end to see what happens when fear replaces respect. Like comment with your... The Midsummer Ball had always been Elara Veyne's nightmare dressed in silk and candlelight. She stood near the eastern colonnade of the Grand Hall, back pressed against cold marble, watching couples spin across the floor like they'd been born knowing how to belong. The orchestra played something bright and meaningless. Laughter bubbled up from clusters of nobles who'd probably never spent a single night wondering if they mattered. Elara had spent 23 years wondering. Her dress was beautiful, cream silk with gold embroidery that her mother had insisted would help. It didn't. Nothing helped. You couldn't stitch worthiness into fabric, couldn't embroider away the truth that everyone in this room could smell. She was different, wrong, incomplete. A servant passed with a tray of wine. Elara took a glass just to have something to hold. "Still here?" The voice came from behind her, sharp and sweet like poisoned honey. Elara didn't turn. She didn't need to. She'd know that voice in a crowded marketplace, in a silent forest, in her sleep. Celeste. Her sister materialized beside her in a gown of midnight blue, diamonds glittering at her throat. Perfect posture, perfect smile, perfect everything, because Celeste had shifted at 13, had found her wolf like it was the easiest thing in the world, had never spent a single moment feeling like a mistake. "I'm here," Elara said quietly. "I can see that." Celeste's smile widened. The question is why? Around them, conversations continued. No one was listening yet. That would change soon. Celeste had a gift for making sure people listened. Mother thinks a lot of things that don't come true. Celeste plucked a glass from a passing tray, took a delicate sip. Like thinking anyone here would look at you as anything but, well, what you are. Elara's fingers tightened on her glass. "I'm the same blood as you." "Half," Celeste corrected. Her voice carried now, just slightly louder. Heads turned. "You're half the same blood, which might be the problem, don't you think?" The conversations around them stuttered, stopped. Elara felt it like a physical thing, attention shifting, focusing, sharpening on her like knives finding their mark. "Celeste, no, I think this is important." Celeste turned to face the growing audience, her smile brilliant and terrible. "We should talk about it. Really talk about it, because everyone's been so polite all evening, pretending not to notice." "Don't," Elara whispered, but Celeste was already raising her glass. "A toast," she announced, her voice ringing clear across the marble floor. "To my dear sister Elara, 23 years old tonight. 23 years and still unmated, still unshifted, still, how did Lady Thornwick put it? Unclaimed by even the most desperate wolf in 3 territories." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Soft at first, then louder. Elara's face went hot. Her throat closed up. "Celeste, please!" We should acknowledge the achievement, shouldn't we?" Celeste continued, her eyes bright with something that might have been cruelty, or might have been worse, pity. "How many balls has it been now? How many seasons? Mother keeps bringing you like she's hoping someone will finally be drunk enough, or desperate enough, or just kind enough." More laughter. Someone near the back made a comment Elara couldn't hear, but it made 3 others snort into their drinks. "But here we are," Celeste said. "Another year, another beautiful dress, another—" The sharp clink of metal on marble cut through her words. Elara looked down. A coin sat on the floor between her feet. Gold, gleaming in the candlelight. She stared at it, couldn't process what it meant. "What?" Another coin landed, then another. Lord Garrett, red-faced and grinning, was tossing them like he was feeding ducks. "For whoever's brave enough to take her," he called out. "Or drunk enough." The laughter exploded. Elara stopped breathing, coins scattered across the marble around her feet. Not many, 5, maybe 6, but enough. Enough to turn her into something that could be bought, something worth less than a loaf of bread. Stop, she heard herself say, but her voice came out wrong, thin and broken. No one stopped. Someone else threw a coin. Then someone else. They were laughing so hard now some of them had tears in their eyes. Celeste stood beside her, not throwing coins, but not stopping them either, just watching with that same bright, interested expression, like she was observing something fascinating and slightly sad. 23 and still unwanted, someone said loudly. Maybe she's cursed, someone else suggested. Maybe she's just broken. The word landed like a stone in still water. Elara looked up. Lady Thornwick stood with her fan spread, diamonds winking at her wrists, surrounded by younger women who hung on her every word like it was scripture. Some things, Lady Thornwick said clearly, simply aren't meant to find mates. It's not cruel to say so. It's just nature. The laughter had shifted now, quieter, more careful. But worse somehow, because now it wasn't just mockery. It was agreement. Elara felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart. That was still beating, still keeping her upright and breathing. Something else. Something that had been holding her together. She stood frozen under the golden chandelier light, surrounded by coins and laughter, and the weight of 300 eyes that saw her as less, not as unwanted, as wrong. The musicians had stopped playing. Across the grand hall, in the shadows near the northern balcony, Kael Draven went very still. The Alpha King of the Northern Territories wasn't supposed to be here. He'd come because his advisors had insisted, because apparently showing his face at the midsummer ball would strengthen alliances and demonstrate goodwill, and a dozen other political reasons that all meant the same thing. Pretend you care about these people. He didn't. He'd turned down 17 nobles' daughters in the past 2 hours. Politely. Firmly. With the kind of absolute clarity that made their fathers stop smiling and their mothers stop scheming. Kael didn't want a mate chosen from a political catalog. Didn't want someone selected because her bloodline was pure, or her family was powerful, or her dowry was impressive. If the bond came, it came. If it didn't, he'd rule alone. But now, he'd been about to leave, had actually started moving toward the exit when the laughter started. Then the coins. Kael stopped. His wolf stirred, not with interest, not with desire, with something else, something that made his pulse stumble and his chest tighten like the air had suddenly become too thin. Warning. He turned. Through the crowd, past the silk and diamonds and carefully styled hair, he saw her. The girl everyone was laughing at. She stood in a pool of golden light from the chandelier, coins scattered at her feet, her face pale and blank like she'd stopped feeling anything at all. Kael's wolf snarled. Not at her, at everything else. His second-in-command, Marcus, appeared at his elbow. We should go. This isn't... Who is she? Kael's voice came out rougher than he'd intended. Marcus followed his gaze. Hesitated. Elara Veyne, daughter of House Veyne. She's... There are rumors. What rumors? That she's not pure-blooded, that she can't shift, that she's... Marcus stopped. That she's what? A mistake, Your Majesty. Kael's hands curled into fists. He should walk away. This wasn't his business. This was pack politics and noble cruelty, and none of it had anything to do with him. But his wolf was still snarling, and something about the way she stood there, not crying, not running, just enduring, made his chest hurt. She shouldn't be here, Marcus said quietly. If she can't shift, if she's half-blood, she shouldn't be at a mating ball. It's cruel, Kael finished. I was going to say pointless. Kael watched the girl, Elara, take a breath. Watched her spine straighten like she was gathering whatever strength she had left. His wolf turned restless, uneasy. Stay away, some instinct whispered. Something's wrong. But Kael had spent 30 years trusting his instincts in battle, in politics, in everything that mattered. And right now, every instinct he had was screaming at him to move. Not away, toward. He started walking. Your Majesty. Marcus sounded alarmed now. Kael ignored him. The crowd parted without him having to ask. That's what happened when you were the Alpha King. People moved because not moving meant being in your way, and no one wanted to be in the way of something that could kill them without breaking a sweat. The laughter died as he moved through the hall. Conversation stuttered into silence. By the time he stopped in front of her, the entire ballroom had gone quiet. Elara looked up. Their eyes met, and Kael's entire world tilted sideways. But Elara had stopped hearing the laughter about 30 seconds after it started. It wasn't that it had stopped hurting. It still hurt. But there was only so much pain a person could process before they just stopped, went numb, shut down every feeling that wasn't strictly necessary for breathing and standing and pretending to be human. So she stood there, staring at the coins on the marble floor, and felt nothing. Until the silence came. Real silence, heavy silence. The kind of silence that only happened when something important had just walked into the room. Elara looked up. The Alpha King stood 3 feet in front of her. She'd seen him before, of course. Everyone had seen him. Kael Draven was the kind of presence you couldn't miss. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that looked black in certain lights and gold in others. He wore power like other men wore cologne, casual and absolute. But she'd never been this close. Had never seen the way those gold-black eyes could focus on a person like they were the only thing in the world worth looking at. He was looking at her like that now. Elara's breath caught. "Your Majesty," someone stammered behind her. Celeste, probably. "We were just quiet." The word wasn't loud, didn't need to be. The entire ballroom went silent. Kael didn't look away from Elara. "Your name." It wasn't a question. It was a command wrapped in 2 words. Elara's mouth was dry. Elara. Elara Veyne. He nodded once, like she'd confirmed something he already knew. Then he held out his hand. Elara stared at it, at his palm, extended between them like an offering or a test or something she didn't have words for. "I don't—" Her voice came out wrong, shaky. "I don't understand. Dance with me." 3 words, simple, impossible. "I can't. You can dance, can't you?" Something flickered in his eyes. Might have been amusement. Might have been something darker. "Yes, but—" She gestured helplessly at herself, at the coins, at everything. "I'm not—" "Not what?" "Not someone you should be seen with. Not someone worth your time. Not someone real." But she couldn't say any of that out loud. Not with 300 people watching. So she just shook her head. Kael's hand didn't waver. "Take it." And maybe it was because she'd already been humiliated past the point of caring. Maybe it was because something in his voice made it sound less like a request and more like a lifeline. Maybe she was just tired of standing in a pool of gold coins while people decided what she was worth. Elara reached out, her fingers touched his palm, and the world exploded. It didn't start gentle. There was no soft glow, no tender warmth spreading through her chest like the romances described. What happened when their hands touched was violent. A surge of something detonated between them. Not heat, not cold, something else entirely. Something that felt like lightning, an earthquake, and the moment before a storm breaks, all compressed into a single heartbeat. Light flickered. The chandeliers above them swayed. Elara gasped, tried to pull back, but Kael's hand had locked around hers like iron. His eyes went wide. Gold bled through the black until his irises looked like molten metal. "What?" he started. Then the pulse came. It erupted outward from where they touched, a shockwave of pure wrong that hit every wolf in the room like a physical blow. Nobles stumbled. Some dropped to their knees. The pressure in the air became crushing, suffocating, like the atmosphere itself was trying to squeeze the breath from their lungs. Kael's aura exploded. Elara had heard about alpha auras before, had heard they could make weaker wolves submit, could fill a room with dominance thick enough to taste. But this wasn't dominance, this was annihilation. The air turned heavy and golden and screaming with power, so absolute it made Elara's bones ache. People were gasping, choking, pressing their foreheads to the marble floor as Kael's wolf surged forward, wild and furious, and completely out of control. Glass trembled in windows, candles flickered and died. And between them, where their hands still touched, something else pulsed. Not a bond. Bonds were supposed to be beautiful, gentle, right. This was none of those things. This was ancient and violent and wrong, like 2 forces that were never meant to touch, had just collided, and now reality itself was trying to figure out what to do with them. Elara felt it in her chest, a pressure building, expanding, threatening to crack her ribs from the inside out. "Stop," she whispered. "Please." But she didn't know who she was talking to. Him? Herself? Whatever this was that had just woken up between them. Kael's fingers tightened on hers. His other hand came up, gripped her shoulder like he was trying to anchor himself to something solid. "What are you?" His voice came out ragged, desperate. "What is this?" "I don't know." The pulse came again, stronger this time. Half the nobles in the room collapsed. The orchestra fled. Somewhere, someone was screaming. And Elara felt it. Something inside her, something she'd never felt before, rising up to meet whatever was pouring out of him. Answering, matching, building into something that felt like it could tear the building down. "She's not pure!" The voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Celeste, still standing somehow, though her face was white and her hands were shaking. "She's half-blood!" Celeste's voice cracked, desperate. "She can't shift. She's a mistake!" The room recoiled. The pressure didn't stop, but the attention shifted. Every eye that could still focus turned to Elara. Half-blood. The word sat in the air like something toxic. "Is that true?" Someone in the crowd, voice hoarse. Lady Thornwick, still on her knees, managed to gasp out, "She's wrong. Not meant to bond. Can't bond. She'll destroy." Kael's hand was still locked around Elara's. The power between them still pulsed, wild and unstable. Everyone was waiting for him to let go, to step back, to end this before it ended everything. Instead, he stepped closer, his eyes, still more gold than black, fixed on hers. "I don't care what you are," Kael said, voice low and rough and certain. "But whatever this is..." The pulse came again. The building shook. His grip tightened. It chose me, too. And the room went silent in a way that had nothing to do with submission and everything to do with fear, because everyone could feel it now. This wasn't a bond forming. This was something breaking, something ancient waking up, something that had been sleeping for a reason. Kael didn't let go. He pulled her closer, his other hand coming up to cup her face, and Elara saw something in his eyes that looked like recognition and terror all mixed together. "What's your full name?" he demanded. "Elara Veyne. Your full name." She didn't understand why it mattered, didn't understand any of this, but she answered anyway. "Elara Veyne Shadowborn." The pulse between them detonated. Light flared, golden laced with something darker, something that looked like smoke and tasted like metal and felt like the moment before something terrible happens. Kael's wolf roared. And somewhere deep in Elara's chest, something answered. Not a wolf. She still couldn't shift, still couldn't feel that part of herself that everyone else seemed to have. But something else, something that had been waiting 23 years to be called by its name. When the light finally faded, when the pressure finally eased enough for people to breathe again, Kael was still holding her. And everyone was staring, not with curiosity anymore, with fear. Marcus appeared at Kael's shoulder, breathing hard. "Your Majesty, we need to leave, now." Kael didn't move. "No. The bond, whatever that was, it's unstable. You need space to..." "I need," Kael said clearly, "everyone in this room to understand something." He turned, and his aura rolled out again, controlled this time, but no less devastating. Every wolf in the ballroom submitted, even the alphas, even the ones who'd been laughing 30 seconds ago. "This woman," Kael said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "is under my protection. Whatever she is, whatever you think she is, doesn't matter. If I hear that anyone has spoken against her, has threatened her, has so much as looked at her the wrong way," his eyes flashed pure gold, "I will consider it a personal insult, and I don't forgive insults." No one moved, no one spoke. Kael looked down at Elara. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. Her legs felt like water. "Then let's go." He kept his hand on hers as they walked toward the exit. The crowd parted like they were something contagious, something dangerous. No one laughed. No one even breathed too loudly. and as they stepped out into the cool night air, Elara heard the whispers starting behind them. Afraid. They were afraid. Not of him, of her, of whatever had just woken up when their hands touched. Kael led her to his carriage, black wood with gold trim, horses that looked like they could outrun nightmares. He helped her inside, then climbed in after her. The door closed, and for the first time since her hand touched his, they were alone. Kael sat across from her, breathing hard, his eyes still more gold than they should be. "What?" he said slowly. "Are you?" Elara looked down at her hands. They were shaking. "I don't know. That wasn't a bond. I know. That was—" He stopped, started again. That felt like something breaking, like reality trying to decide what to do with us. "I know. Have you ever felt anything like that before?" "No." Elara met his eyes. "I've never felt anything before. No wolf, no bond sense. Nothing." Kael stared at her. "Nothing? I'm half-blood. I can't shift. Everyone's right. I'm wrong. Broken. I'm not supposed to exist like this. Broken things," Kael said quietly, "don't make the entire world stop and pay attention." The carriage started moving. Elara didn't know where they were going, didn't care. She felt hollowed out, scraped clean, like everything she'd been holding together for 23 years had just shattered, and she was still waiting to find out what would be left. "Shadowborn," Kael said suddenly. "That's not a common name." "It's my mother's family name. My father was Veyne." "Was? He's dead. Been dead since I was 3. Kael went very still. "How did he die?" "Mother says it was an accident, hunting accident." Elara pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "But she doesn't talk about it." "And your mother's family?" "Don't claim me. They never have. Half-blood children of mixed unions we're not accepted, not fully." "Shadowborn," Kael repeated, like he was testing the word. "I've heard that name before. It's old, really old. Mother says her line goes back to before the territories were established." The carriage hit a bump. Elara grabbed the seat to steady herself. Kael was still staring at her. "When we touched, did you feel it?" "The explosion?" "Yes." "Not the explosion after. The thing that answered." Elara's throat went tight. "I don't know what that was." "Yes, you do." She looked away. "I've never been able to shift. I've tried. For years I tried. There's nothing there." "There's something there," Kael said flatly. "I felt it. My wolf felt it. And whatever it wasn't nothing." Elara wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he'd felt the bond misfiring or reality glitching or literally anything except what he was suggesting. But she'd felt it too. That thing in her chest, rising up to meet his power. Not a wolf. Something else. "Where are we going?" she asked instead. "The Northern Palace." "What?" "You can't go back to your family. Not after that." Kael's voice was certain, absolute. "They'll either lock you away or use you, and I'm not letting either happen." "You don't even know me." "I know you're mine." The words landed in the carriage like stones. Elara's heart stuttered. "We're not bonded." "No," Kael agreed. "We're something else. Something that probably shouldn't exist, but it does now. And that makes you mine. My responsibility. My—" He stopped. "Your what?" Kael's eyes met hers, gold and black and burning with something that looked like fear and certainty all mixed together. "I don't know yet," he said quietly, "but we're going to find out." The carriage rolled through the night, carrying them away from the midsummer ball, away from the laughter and the coins and the life Elara had known, toward something neither of them understood, something ancient, something wrong, something that had just woken up and didn't care that it wasn't supposed to exist. And behind them, in the grand hall, nobles picked themselves up off the marble floor and started whispering. About the half-blood girl. About the Alpha King who'd claimed her anyway. About the way reality had fractured when they touched. About what it meant that something so wrong could feel so powerful. The whispers spread through 3 territories by morning, and by the time the sun rose, everyone knew. The Alpha King hadn't chosen his mate. He'd bound himself to something the world was never meant to survive. The Northern Palace wasn't what Elara expected. She'd imagined something cold and imposing, all stone towers and iron gates, the kind of place that looked like it had been built to keep things out. Or in. What she got instead was something older, darker. A sprawling fortress carved into the mountainside itself, with walls that looked like they'd grown from the rock rather than been built on top of it. Torches burned in brackets along the main courtyard, casting shadows that moved wrong, that seemed to reach toward the carriage as it rolled through the gates. The air tasted different here, sharper, like metal and pine and something else she couldn't name. Kael hadn't spoken since they'd left the city limits. He'd sat across from her in the carriage, eyes closed, breathing controlled like he was trying to keep something caged. Every few minutes, his fingers would flex against his knees, and Elara would feel it, that pull between them, that unstable thing that pulsed like a second heartbeat. It hadn't gone away. If anything, it was getting stronger. The carriage stopped. Kael's eyes opened, still more gold than they should be. "We're here." Before Elara could respond, the door swung open and Marcus appeared, looking about as happy as someone who'd just watched their carefully organized world catch fire. "Your Majesty." His voice was tight. "The council is waiting. They can keep waiting. They've been waiting for 3 hours. They're not happy." "I don't care if they're happy." Kael stepped out of the carriage, then turned back and offered Elara his hand. She stared at it. "It's just a hand," Kael said. "It won't explode again." "You don't know that." "No," he admitted. "But I'm willing to risk it if you are." Elara took his hand. Nothing exploded. But the pulse came anyway, softer this time, almost gentle, like whatever had detonated between them at the ball was learning how to exist without destroying everything around it. Kael's fingers tightened briefly on hers, then released. "This way." He led her through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Stone walls lined with tapestries that were so old the images had faded into abstract shapes. Torches that burned without smoke. Servants who stopped and stared as they passed, their eyes widening when they saw Elara. She could feel their fear. It clung to the air like humidity, thick and suffocating. "They know," she said quietly. "Word travels fast." Kael didn't slow down. "By tomorrow morning, every territory will know what happened at the ball. And they'll know what I am. They don't know what you are, neither do we." They turned a corner and nearly ran into a woman who looked like she'd been carved from ice and fury. She was tall, almost Kael's height, with silver blonde hair pulled back so severely it looked painful, and eyes that were the coldest shade of blue Elara had ever seen. She wore dark robes edged with white fur, and when she moved, it was with the kind of predatory grace that said she could kill you before you realized she'd moved. "Kael." Her voice could have frozen water. "We need to talk." "Later, Lyra." "Now." Kael stopped. Something passed between them, some silent conversation that happened entirely in eye contact and small shifts in posture. Finally, Kael nodded. "Fine. 5 minutes." He turned to Marcus. "Take Elara to the East Wing, the Blue Room." "Your Majesty, the Council can wait 5 more minutes." Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but knew better. He gestured for Elara to follow. "This way, miss." Elara glanced back at Kael, but he was already deep in conversation with the Ice Woman, their voices too low to hear. She followed Marcus down another corridor, then another, until they reached a door that looked like all the others. Marcus opened it, stepped aside. The room beyond was beautiful in a stark, practical way. Stone walls softened by thick rugs, a fire already burning in the hearth, a bed that looked big enough to sleep 4 people, windows that overlooked mountains that seemed to go on forever. "Someone will bring you dinner," Marcus said, "and clothes. Yours are—" He gestured vaguely at her ball gown, now wrinkled and stained from the carriage ride. "Thank you." Marcus started to leave, then stopped. "Can I ask you something?" Elara tensed. "Yes?" "When you touched him, when that thing happened, did you choose it?" "What?" "The bond, or whatever it was. Did you choose it, or did it just happen?" Elara's throat went tight. "I don't know. I didn't think I could bond. I've never felt anything like that before." Marcus studied her for a long moment. "His Majesty has turned down every potential mate the Council has presented for 3 years. Do you know why?" "No." Because he said the bond would choose, that he wouldn't force something that was supposed to be natural. Marcus's expression was unreadable. And now this. I didn't ask for this, Elara said quietly. I know. Marcus's voice softened slightly. But it happened anyway, and now we all have to live with it. He left. Elara stood in the middle of the blue room, still wearing her ruined ball gown, and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 6 hours. She'd been humiliated, auctioned, claimed by the Alpha King, discovered that something wrong lived inside her chest. And now she was here, in a fortress carved into a mountain, surrounded by people who were afraid of her. She walked to the window and looked out at the darkness. Somewhere out there, her mother was probably panicking. Celeste was probably celebrating. Lady Thornwick was probably already spreading rumors. And Elara was here. Changed, marked by something she didn't understand and couldn't control. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass and tried not to think about what would happen when the sun came up. The council chamber was exactly as hostile as Kael had expected. 12 alphas from the major houses, plus Lyra representing the northern packs, all seated around a table that had been carved from a single piece of ancient oak. They'd been arguing for the better part of 3 hours about trade disputes and territory boundaries, and a dozen other things that suddenly seemed completely irrelevant. The moment Kael walked in, every conversation died. Your Majesty. Lord Cassian spoke first because Lord Cassian always spoke first. He was old guard nobility, the kind who thought tradition was more important than progress, and couldn't understand why the world kept changing without his permission. We've been waiting. I'm aware. Kael took his seat at the head of the table. What do you want to know? Is it true? Lady Morgrave this time, her voice sharp as broken glass. Did you claim a half-blood at the midsummer ball? I claimed Elara Veyne, yes. The room erupted. Kael let them yell for about 30 seconds before he let his aura slip just enough to make them all shut up. One at a time, he said calmly. Lord Cassian recovered first. Your Majesty, with all due respect, this is insane. A half-blood cannot be your mate. The bloodline must remain pure. The bloodline is fine. She can't even shift. This from Lord Brennan, who looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. What kind of queen can't take her wolf form? The kind who made every alpha in that ballroom drop to their knees when we touched, Kael said flatly. Silence. What? Lady Morgrave leaned forward. What do you mean? Kael debated how much to tell them. Settled on the truth. When I touched her, something activated, something powerful, unstable. My wolf lost control. The bond, if that's what it is, it's not normal. Not normal how? Lyra's voice cut through the tension. She was the only one who didn't look afraid, just calculating. It felt wrong. Ancient, like something that shouldn't exist. Then reject her, Lord Cassian said immediately. Before it's too late. Before, I'm not rejecting her. Why not? Because the moment their hands had touched, Kael's wolf had recognized something. Not a mate, not exactly, but something close, something that mattered. Because when that unstable power had detonated between them, Kael had felt more alive than he had in years. Because rejection would kill her. He didn't know how he knew that, but he did. Whatever had formed between them wasn't the kind of thing you could just sever without consequences. But he couldn't say any of that to the council. So instead he said, because she's mine now, and I don't give up what's mine. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Your Majesty. Lady Morgrave's voice was careful now, controlled. We understand the desire to protect what you've claimed, but this girl, she's dangerous. Half-bloods are unstable. They don't bond properly. They can't produce heirs. You don't know that. We know enough. The old texts are clear. Mixed bloodlines create abominations. Things that destroy packs from the inside out. Kael's hands curled into fists under the table. She's not an abomination. Then what is she? Lord Brennan demanded. Because something made the entire ballroom collapse. Something made your aura go wild. If that's not dangerous, what is? Kael didn't have an answer. I want her examined, Lady Morgrave said, by the scholars. We need to know what we're dealing with. No. Your Majesty. No. Kael's voice went hard. She's not a specimen to be studied. She's a person, and she's under my protection. A person who might destroy us all. Lord Cassian muttered. The words hung in the air like smoke. Kael stood. This meeting is over. We're not finished. Yes, you are. Kael's eyes flashed gold. I've listened to your concerns, I've heard your fears, and my answer is no. I'm not rejecting her. I'm not handing her over to be examined like some kind of experiment. She stays. She's protected. And if anyone has a problem with that, he let his aura fill the room, thick and suffocating. You're welcome to challenge me for it. No one moved. No one was stupid enough to challenge an Alpha King. Kael walked out before anyone could find their voice again. Lyra caught up with him in the corridor. That went well, she said dryly. They'll adjust. Will they? Lyra fell into step beside him. Because from where I'm standing, you just told the entire council that you're keeping a potential threat in the palace, and they're not allowed to do anything about it. She's not a threat. You don't know that. Kael stopped walking, turned to face her. What do you want me to do, Lyra? I want you to be smart about this. Lyra's eyes were sharp. I've known you since you were 12 years old. I trained you, fought beside you, and I've never seen you act like this. Like what? Reckless. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. Whatever happened at that ball, whatever you felt, it's clouding your judgment. My judgment is fine. Is it? Because you just claimed a girl you don't know who triggered something unstable enough to make an entire ballroom collapse, and you're refusing to let anyone examine what she is. I know what she is. Do you? Kael's jaw tightened. She's mine. That's not an answer. That's an obsession. The words hit harder than they should have. Kael looked away. What would you have me do? Reject her? Lock her up? Study her like she's some kind of monster? I'd have you be careful, Lyra said quietly. Because whatever that bond is, it's not stable. And unstable things have a way of exploding at the worst possible moment. Kael wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, but he'd felt it too. That wrongness, that sense that they'd activated something that maybe should have stayed dormant. I'll be careful, he said finally. Lyra didn't look convinced. Where is she now? East Wing, Blue Room. And you're just leaving her there? Alone? She needs time to process. She needs answers. Lyra's voice sharpened. And so do you. If you're going to keep her, you need to know what you're keeping. I'm not interrogating her on her first night here. I'm not suggesting interrogation. I'm suggesting conversation, because right now, all you have is a girl who made your wolf lose control, and that's not enough. Kael knew she was right, hated that she was right. Fine, he said. I'll talk to her. Good. Lyra started walking again. And Kael? Whatever you're feeling, whether it's the bond or something else, don't let it blind you. Because if she really is dangerous, hesitation will get people killed. She left before he could respond. Kael stood in the corridor for a long moment, feeling the pull in his chest, that constant awareness of where Elara was, like a compass needle always pointing north. Then he started walking toward the east wing. Alba? Asi? An? Elara was standing at the window when she felt him coming. Not footsteps. Something else. That pull between them, growing stronger as he got closer. By the time he knocked, her heart was already racing. Come in. The door opened. Kael looked different here, in his own palace. Less controlled, more raw. His hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, and his eyes were still that unsettling gold black. How are you? He closed the door behind him. Fine. You're a terrible liar. Elara turned back to the window. What do you want me to say? That I'm terrified? That I don't understand what's happening? That every person I've seen since we got here looks at me like I'm about to explode? Yes, Kael said quietly. I want you to say that, because it's honest. You want honesty? Always. Fine, Elara faced him. I'm terrified. I don't know what happened at that ball. I don't know what's inside me. I don't know why touching you felt like the world was ending, and I don't know what you want from me. Kael crossed the room in 3 strides, stopped just close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him. I don't want anything from you, he said, except the truth. I don't know the truth. Then tell me what you do know. His voice softened. Tell me about your family, about growing up, about why you've never been able to shift. Elara's throat tightened. Why does it matter? Because something happened when we touched, something ancient, and I need to understand what. She looked up at him, saw genuine curiosity in his eyes. Not fear, not disgust, just interest. I don't remember much about my father, she said finally. He died when I was 3. Hunting accident, like I said. Mother doesn't talk about him. And your mother's family, the Shadowborns? They never claim me. Mother says it's because I'm half-blood, that her family doesn't accept mixed unions. But she kept the name. It's all she has left of them. Kael nodded slowly. When did you realize you couldn't shift? When I was 13. Everyone else started changing, started finding their wolves. I tried. Every full moon for 2 years I tried. Elara's voice went flat. Nothing ever happened. Does it hurt, trying? Yes. The word came out sharper than she'd intended. Kael's expression shifted. Show me. What? Show me. Try to shift. Here. Now. I can't. I know you can't, but I want to see what happens when you try. Elara stared at him. Why? Because maybe it's not that you can't shift. Maybe it's that you're shifting into something else. The words landed like stones. Elara's pulse jumped. That's not possible. Isn't it? Kael stepped closer. You felt it at the ball, that thing that answered my wolf. That wasn't nothing. It wasn't a wolf. No, but it was something. Elara's hands were shaking. If I try and it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But at least we'll know. She wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell him she'd tried 1,000 times and failed 1,000 times. And she didn't need to add one more failure to the list. But something in his eyes made her want to try anyway. Okay, she whispered. Kael stepped back, giving her space. Elara closed her eyes and reached for that place inside herself where everyone said the wolf should be. That place she'd reached for 1,000 times before and found empty. She called to it, pulled at it, begged it to answer. Nothing. Just the same hollow emptiness she'd felt since she was 13. Tears pricked her eyes. I told you. Try again, Kael said. But this time, don't call for a wolf. What? Call for whatever answered me at the ball. Elara opened her eyes. I don't know how. Yes, you do. Kael's voice was certain. Close your eyes. Feel the pull between us. Follow it. She did. Closed her eyes. Felt that constant awareness of him, that thread connecting them, pulsing like a heartbeat. Followed it. And found something. Not a wolf. Not anything with a shape or a name, but something, a presence, ancient and sleeping and vast. It stirred when she touched it. Elara gasped. What? Kael's voice urgent. What do you feel? Something's there. Her voice shook. Something's always been there. I didn't know how to reach it. Keep going. She pushed deeper, touched that sleeping thing. It woke up. Power exploded through her chest. Not gentle, not controlled, just raw and wild and absolutely terrifying. Elara's eyes flew open. The room was glowing. Golden light poured from her skin, from her hands, from every part of her. Not hot, not burning, just there, existing, answering. Kael's breath caught. What are you? I don't know. The words came out wrong, doubled, like 2 voices speaking at once. The light pulsed, and Elara felt it, that thing inside her, fully awake now, pressing against her ribs like it wanted out. Stop, Kael said suddenly. Elara, stop, pull back. She tried. The thing didn't want to go back to sleep. I can't. Yes, you can. Kael was in front of her now, hands on her shoulders. Listen to me. You're in control, not it, you. It's too strong. You're stronger. His eyes locked on hers. Pull it back, now. Elara grabbed onto his voice like a lifeline. Pulled. The thing inside her snarled. She pulled harder, slowly, so slowly it felt like moving through tar. The power retreated. The light dimmed. The presence went back to sleep. Elara collapsed. Kael caught her before she hit the floor, lowered her carefully onto the bed. What? She gasped. Was that? I don't know. Kael's voice was shaken. But it's not a wolf. Then what is it? He looked at her for a long moment. Something older. Morning came too fast. Elara woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of someone knocking. Miss Veyne? A woman's voice. May I come in? Elara sat up. She was still wearing her ball gown. At some point during the night, someone had covered her with a blanket. Kael was gone. Yes, she called. The door opened and a woman entered, middle-aged, practical-looking, carrying a tray with food and a stack of clothes. His Majesty thought you might need these. She set the tray down on the table, the clothes on the bed. I'm Helena, head housekeeper. If you need anything, just ask. Thank you. Helena studied her for a moment. The scholars are here. Elara's stomach dropped. What? The council sent for them last night. They're in the library now, waiting to speak with you. I thought Kael said he wouldn't let them examine me. He didn't say they couldn't talk to you. Helena's expression was sympathetic. His Majesty is trying to balance what the council wants with what you need. It's not an easy line to walk. Elara looked down at her hands. They looked normal. No glow, no power, but she could still feel it. That sleeping thing just beneath her skin. Do I have to go? She asked quietly. Eventually, but you can eat first. Get cleaned up. Take your time. Helena left. Elara sat on the bed, surrounded by borrowed clothes and unanswered questions, and tried to figure out what she was supposed to do next. She thought last night was the worst of it. The humiliation, the claiming, the discovery that something wrong lived inside her. But looking at the tray of food, at the scholarly robes waiting to dissect her like a specimen, she realized something. Last night was just the beginning. The real test was about to start, and she had no idea if she'd survive it. Elara made them wait an hour, not out of defiance, though there was some satisfaction in knowing the scholars were sitting in the library getting increasingly impatient. Mostly it was because she needed the time, needed to eat, to wash, to put on clothes that didn't smell like fear and champagne and the ruins of her old life. The outfit Helena had brought was simple: dark trousers, a cream-colored shirt, a fitted jacket that actually seemed designed for movement rather than decoration. No corset, no layers of silk, just practical clothing that made her feel less like an ornament and more like a person. She braided her hair back, looked at herself in the mirror, and tried to recognize the woman staring back. Same face, same brown eyes, same two sharp cheekbones that Celeste always said made her look half-starved. But something had changed. There was a hardness there now, a wariness, like she'd spent 23 years being soft, and last night had burned that softness right out of her. A knock at the door. Miss Veyne? Helena again. They're getting restless. Good, Elara said. Then, because that sounded harsher than she'd intended, I'm coming. The library was in the oldest part of the palace, down corridors that smelled like stone and time, and secrets that had been buried so long they'd turned to dust. Helena led her through a door carved with symbols Elara didn't recognize, into a room that seemed to go on forever. Books. Thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands. Shelves that climbed 3 stories high, connected by spiral staircases and narrow walkways. Windows that let in shafts of morning light, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny ghosts. And in the center of it all, at a long table covered in open books and scattered papers, sat 3 people who looked like they'd been alive since the palace was built. 2 men, 1 woman, all old. Not elderly, but old in the way that suggested they'd seen things that aged you from the inside out. They wore robes of deep gray edged with silver thread, and when they turned to look at Elara, their eyes were sharp enough to cut. Miss Veyne, the woman spoke first. Her voice was dry as old paper. I'm Scholar Miriam. This is Scholar Aldrich and Scholar Thorn. Please sit. It wasn't a request. Elara sat. The 3 scholars studied her like she was a particularly interesting specimen they'd just discovered under a microscope. You're younger than I expected, Aldrich said. He was the oldest of the 3, with white hair and hands that trembled slightly when he moved. How old are you? 23. And you've never shifted? No. Not once? Not even partially? No. Thorn leaned forward. He was younger than the other two, maybe 50, with dark eyes that reminded Elara uncomfortably of Kael's. What about your parents? Did they both shift normally? My father did. My mother, I don't know. I've never seen her shift. The three scholars exchanged glances. Interesting, Miriam murmured. She made a note on the paper in front of her. Tell us about last night, about what happened when you touched the king. Elara's hands curled into fists under the table. Why does it matter? Because, Aldrich said patiently, what happened last night hasn't happened in over 300 years, and we need to understand why it happened now. What do you mean, 300 years? Miriam closed the book in front of her with a soft thump. Have you ever heard of the Shadowborn convergence? No, of course not. Most people haven't. It's been erased from common history. Miriam stood, walked to one of the shelves, and pulled down a book so old the leather binding was cracked and peeling. But we remember. She set the book on the table, opened it carefully. The pages were covered in text Elara couldn't read, some ancient language that looked more like art than writing. But there were illustrations, detailed, beautiful, and absolutely terrifying. People with light pouring from their skin, wolves bowing before them, cities burning in the background. The Shadowborn, Miriam said quietly, were the first, before the territories were established, before the packs formed. They were something else, something older than wolves, something that could command them. Elara's throat went dry. What were they? We don't know exactly. The records are incomplete, but we know they were powerful, dangerous, and absolutely unstable. They bonded, Thorne added, but not the way we do now. Their bonds were violent, consuming. Two Shadowborn coming together could level a city if they weren't careful. So the packs hunted them, Aldrich finished, systematically, over generations, until there were none left. The room went very quiet. None left, Elara repeated slowly. Except my mother's family. If that's what they are, Miriam said carefully. We can't be certain without examining. No. Kael's voice came from the doorway. All three scholars jumped. Elara hadn't heard him come in, hadn't felt him approaching, which was strange because she could usually feel that pull between them from rooms away. He walked into the library like he owned it, which technically he did, and stopped beside Elara's chair. Your Majesty. Miriam inclined her head. We were just explaining the historical context. I heard. Kael's hand came to rest on the back of Elara's chair, not touching her, but close, protective. What else do your books say? The scholars exchanged another one of those loaded glances. They say, Aldrich said slowly, that Shadowborn should never bond with alpha wolves. The power combination is too unstable, too dangerous. It creates something that can't be controlled. And yet, Kael said flatly, here we are. Here you are, Miriam agreed, which presents us with a problem, only if you make it one. Your Majesty, with respect, this isn't something we can ignore. If she truly is Shadowborn, if that's what activated last night, then every wolf in this palace is in danger. Every wolf in the territories is in danger. From what? Elara found her voice. I haven't done anything. Haven't hurt anyone. Not yet, Thorne said. But the records are clear. Shadowborn lose control. Their power grows until they can't contain it anymore. And when it breaks free, he gestured at one of the illustrations. A city in ruins, bodies scattered like leaves. Elara felt sick. That's not going to happen, Kael said. You can't know that. Yes, I can. His voice went hard. Because she's not alone. She has me, and I'm not letting her lose control. Your confidence is admirable, Miriam said. But confidence doesn't stop power from doing what power does. Then what do you suggest? Kael's eyes flashed gold. Locking her up? Killing her? Because I'm not doing either. We're suggesting, Aldrich said carefully, that she be monitored, studied, taught to control whatever's inside her before it destroys everything. Taught by who? You? We're the only ones who know the old texts, the old methods. Yes, we would teach her. Kael looked down at Elara. What do you want? The question caught her off guard. What? They're talking about you like you're not here, like you don't get a say. So I'm asking, what do you want? Elara looked at the scholars, at their ancient books and their older fears. at the illustrations of burning cities and people who'd been hunted to extinction. "I want to understand," she said quietly. "I want to know what I am, what's inside me, so I can control it." "And if you can't?" Miriam asked. Elara met her eyes. "Then at least I'll know what's coming." The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush stone. Finally, Miriam nodded. "Very well. We'll teach you what we know. But understand, this won't be easy. The Shadowborn who tried to control their power, most of them failed. Most of them died trying." "I'm not planning to die," Elara said. "No one ever is." The first lesson started that afternoon. They cleared a space in the training yard, a wide courtyard surrounded by high stone walls, far enough from the main palace that if something went wrong, the damage would be contained. Hopefully. Kael insisted on being there. So did Marcus and Lyra, though neither looked happy about it. The scholars sat up in one corner, surrounded by books and what looked like measuring instruments made of brass and crystal. Elara stood in the center of the courtyard, feeling exposed and ridiculous. "Close your eyes," Miriam instructed. "Find that presence inside you, the one you felt last night." Elara closed her eyes, reached inward. The sleeping thing was still there, quieter now, but present, waiting. "I feel it," she said. "Good. Now try to wake it. Just a little. Don't pull. Coax." Elara tried. The thing stirred, power flickered through her chest. "That's it," Aldrich said. "Gentle. Keep it gentle." But the power didn't want to be gentle. The moment Elara touched it, it surged. Light exploded from her hands, golden and wild. The air pressure dropped. The stones beneath her feet cracked. "Pull back!" Miriam shouted. Elara tried. The power fought her. Then Kael was there, his hand on her shoulder, his aura flooding the space between them. "Listen to me," he said, voice calm. "You're in control, not it. Breathe." Elara gasped in a breath. Another. The power was screaming now, trying to break free. "I can't." "Yes, you can." Kael's other hand came up to cup her face, forcing her to look at him. "Focus on me, on my voice, on the bond between us." "There is no bond. There's something. Use it." Elara grabbed onto that awareness of him, that constant pull, that thread connecting them, wrapped it around the power like a rope, pulled. The power snarled, fought. Elara pulled harder. Slowly, inch by terrible inch, the light dimmed. The pressure eased. The power retreated. When it was over, Elara was shaking so hard her knees gave out. Kael caught her. "I've got you." "That was 10 seconds, Miriam said, consulting one of her instruments. 10 seconds, and she nearly lost control. "But she didn't," Kael said sharply. "This time." Miriam looked grim. "Your Majesty, this is worse than I thought. The power inside her, it's not dormant. It's active, growing. At this rate, she'll lose control completely within weeks, maybe days. Then we train harder. Training won't help if the power outpaces her ability to contain it." Kael's arms tightened around Elara. "Then what do you suggest?" "There might be a way." Aldrich stepped forward, holding one of the ancient books. The old texts mention a ritual, a binding. It would link her power to yours, let you help her control it. "What kind of binding?" "A permanent one. It would tie your lives together. Your power, your life force, everything. If one of you dies, the other follows." The courtyard went silent. "No," Lyra said flatly. "Absolutely not. Your Majesty, you can't seriously be considering—" "What are the risks?" Kael asked, ignoring her. "Beyond the obvious?" Aldrich consulted the book. "The ritual itself is dangerous. If it fails, it could kill you both. If it succeeds, you'll be bound in ways we don't fully understand, and there's no reversal. Once it's done, it's permanent. And if we don't do it? Then she loses control," Miriam said bluntly, "and probably destroys everything within a mile radius when she does." Kael looked down at Elara. "What do you think?" Her hands were still shaking. She could feel that thing inside her, already stirring again, hungry for more. "I think," she said quietly, "I don't want to be a weapon that destroys everything it touches." "Then we do the ritual." "Your Majesty!" Marcus started. I said we do it. Kael's voice left no room for argument. When? Tonight, Aldrich said. During the new moon. The power will be at its lowest. It's the safest time. Fine. Prepare everything. The scholars hurried off, already arguing about what would be needed. Lyra stepped closer. This is insane. You're going to bind your life to hers based on what? A feeling? Some unstable connection that might be a bond or might be something worse? I'm doing what needs to be done. You're being reckless. Maybe. Kael helped Elara stand, but I'd rather be reckless than watch her burn herself to ash trying to contain something alone. Lyra stared at him for a long moment. If this goes wrong, if she loses control anyway, I won't hesitate. You understand that? I understand. Do you? Lyra's eyes were hard. Because I've known you your entire life, Kael, and I've never seen you like this. Whatever you feel for her, it's clouding your judgment. My judgment is fine, is it? Because from where I'm standing, you're about to tie your life to a girl you've known for less than a day. A girl who might be the same thing that nearly destroyed the territories 300 years ago. Kael's jaw tightened. She's not a thing. She's a person. A person with enough power to level cities. Don't forget that. Lyra walked away before he could respond. Marcus lingered. She's right, you know. This is... I know what it is, Kael said quietly. But I also know what happens if I don't do it. And I'm not letting her face that alone. Marcus sighed. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Hassan. The ritual chamber was deep beneath the palace, in a part of the fortress so old the walls seemed to breathe with age. They'd cleared the space, drawn symbols on the floor and something that looked like silver mixed with blood. Candles burned in a perfect circle, their flames unnaturally still despite the air moving through the chamber. Elara stood at the center, trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Kael stood across from her, stripped to the waist, similar symbols painted across his chest and arms. The three scholars surrounded them, chanting in that ancient language Elara couldn't understand. When I tell you, Miriam had said earlier, you'll both need to call your power. Let it rise. Let it meet. The ritual will do the rest. Supposedly. The chanting grew louder. Elara felt the power inside her stir, responding to the ritual like it recognized something. Now, Miriam said. Call it now. Elara reached for that sleeping thing. It woke up immediately, surging forward with violent hunger. Light exploded from her skin. Golden. Burning. Across from her, Kael's eyes went pure gold. His aura flooded the chamber, thick and suffocating. Their power met in the space between them. And everything went wrong. The ritual was supposed to bind them gently, connect their power in controlled ways. Instead, it collided. Light and shadow crashed together like waves meeting a cliff. The symbols on the floor flared, then cracked. Candles exploded. The scholars stumbled back, their chanting cut off. Elara screamed as power ripped through her. Not hers, his, pouring into her like water into a drowning person's lungs. Kael dropped to his knees, his hands clawed at the stone floor. His wolf was howling, trapped between forms, caught in the violent pull between them. Stop it, Miriam shouted. You have to stop. But Elara couldn't stop. The power had taken control, was consuming everything, burning through her like wildfire. She felt Kael's life force tangling with hers, felt his heartbeat sinking with her pulse, felt something ancient and terrible waking up between them. Not a bond, a convergence. The thing the Shadowborn had created 300 years ago, the thing that had destroyed cities. It was happening again. And this time there was no one left alive who knew how to stop it. Elara's vision went white. She felt herself fracturing, felt reality itself bending around them. Then she heard it. A voice. Not Kael's, not the scholars. Something else. Something that came from that ancient thing inside her. You're not separate. You were never separate. Find the center. What center? She gasped. Where you meet, where the power balances. Find it. Elara reached through the chaos, through the burning and the breaking, reached for Kael, found him. Their hands clasped in the wreckage of the ritual, and everything stopped. The power didn't disappear, but it stopped fighting, stopped trying to destroy. Instead, It flowed, back and forth between them, balancing, settling into a rhythm that felt almost natural. Elara's eyes opened. Kael was staring at her, his eyes still gold, his breathing ragged. Between them, where their hands touched, light pulsed, steady, controlled. A heartbeat made of power. What? Miriam's voice shook. What did you do? Elara didn't know how to answer, because she could feel it now, all of it. Kael's heartbeat, his emotions, his fear and his determination, and his absolute refusal to let her go. And he could feel hers. They were bound. Not the way the ritual had intended, but bound nonetheless, permanently, irrevocably. Two people who'd been strangers yesterday were now so tangled together that Elara couldn't tell where she ended and he began. I can feel you, Kael said quietly. Everything. Your fear, your confusion, your... He stopped. Elara knew what he was going to say, could feel it herself. The small, terrified part of her that was starting to trust him, starting to believe maybe she wasn't alone anymore. The ritual worked, Aldrich said, staring at his instruments in disbelief. But not the way it was supposed to. You didn't just bind your power, you bound everything. Can it be undone? Lyra demanded from the doorway. No. Miriam's voice was certain. Not without killing them both. Lyra swore viciously. Kael helped Elara stand. The movement should have been awkward, but it wasn't. Their bodies moved in sync like they'd been doing this for years instead of seconds. How do you feel? He asked. Like I just became half of something bigger. Elara looked down at their joined hands. You? Same. They were still glowing, faintly. The light pulsed with their shared heartbeat. We need to test this, Thorn said. See if the binding holds when you're apart. Later, Kael said. Right now, she needs rest. Your Majesty, this is unprecedented. We need to... Later! Kael's voice went hard. That's an order. The scholars backed off. Kael led Elara out of the chamber, through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, back to the blue room. He didn't let go of her hand the entire way. When they finally reached her room, when he finally stepped back, the separation felt like tearing. Elara gasped. I feel it too, Kael said quietly. Like losing a limb. Will it always be like this? I don't know. They stood in the doorway, neither willing to move further apart. I can feel what you're thinking, Elara said. Not words, just emotions, fear, guilt, something else. Same. Kael's jaw tightened. This wasn't supposed to happen. The binding was supposed to help you control your power, not... Turn us into this? Yeah. Elara looked down at her hands. They'd stopped glowing, but she could still feel it. That constant flow of power between them. I'm sorry, Kael said. For what? For dragging you into this. For claiming you at the ball. For pushing the ritual, for... He stopped. For all of it. You didn't drag me anywhere. Elara met his eyes. I chose to take your hand, chose to try the ritual. This isn't your fault. Isn't it? No. Her voice firmed. Whatever this is, whatever we are now, we're in it together. That's what the binding means, right? Together? Kael stared at her for a long moment. You're stronger than you look. I've had to be. He nodded slowly. Get some rest. We'll figure out what this means in the morning. He started to leave. Kael? He stopped. Can you feel it? The thing inside me? The Shadowborn power? Yes. Is it still growing? He was quiet for a moment. Yes. But slower now. The binding is helping contain it. For now. And later? Later we figure out how to control it, before it controls us. He left. Elara closed the door and leaned against it, feeling the pull of him even through stone and distance. She could sense him walking down the corridor, could feel his worry, his exhaustion, his determination, could feel the moment he stopped and looked back toward her room. The binding had worked, but whether it had saved her or damned them both, she had no idea. She walked to the window, looked out at the mountains bathed in moonlight, and felt that ancient thing inside her stir, still growing, still hungry. And now, thanks to the binding, Kael was tied to it too. If she lost control, she wouldn't just destroy herself. She'd destroy him. The thought should have terrified her, Instead, it made her angry. She'd spent 23 years being powerless, being wrong, being the mistake everyone whispered about. But she had power now. Too much power. And she was done being afraid of it. If the scholars couldn't teach her to control it, she'd figure it out herself. If the council wanted her gone, they'd have to go through Kael first. And if that ancient Shadowborn thing inside her thought it could take control, well, it had never met anyone as stubborn as Elara Veyne. She turned away from the window, determination settling in her chest like iron. Tomorrow, she'd start learning, start fighting, start becoming whatever she needed to be to survive this. But tonight, a pulse of power surged through her, stronger than before. Elara gasped, grabbed the windowsill to steady herself. Down the corridor, she felt Kael stumble, felt his alarm spike. The binding pulsed between them, carrying the overflow of power. It wasn't helping anymore. The Shadowborn thing was growing too fast. And as Elara stood there, feeling that ancient force expanding inside her chest, she realized something. The scholars had been wrong about one thing. She didn't have weeks. She had days. Maybe hours. Before the power broke free. And when it did, the binding meant Kael would burn with her. Kael felt the surge hit him like a physical blow. He'd made it halfway back to his chambers when the power exploded through the binding. Not his power, hers, wild and burning and completely out of control. His knees buckled. He caught himself against the wall, gasping. Down the corridor, through stone and distance, he felt Elara's panic spike. Then he was running. Marcus appeared from somewhere, calling after him, but Kael ignored it. The binding was screaming now, carrying waves of that ancient power that felt like it was trying to tear him apart from the inside. He hit Elara's door hard enough to crack the wood. She was on the floor, curled into herself, light pouring from her skin in pulses that made the air shimmer. Her eyes were wide and terrified. "I can't stop it," she gasped. "Kael, I can't." He was beside her in an instant, hands on her shoulders. "Look at me." "It's too strong." I said, "Look at me." Her eyes met his. Gold met brown. The binding flared between them, and Kael felt the full force of what was happening inside her. The Shadowborn power wasn't just growing anymore. It was devouring, consuming everything it touched, trying to break free of the fragile container of her body. And because of the binding, it was starting to consume him too. "We have to break it," Elara said, her voice breaking. "The binding, we have to—" "No. You'll die. So will you." Kael's hands tightened on her shoulders. "And I'm not letting that happen." "Then what do we do?" Kael didn't have an answer. The scholars had said the binding would help her control the power, but it wasn't helping. If anything, it was making things worse. The power was feeding on the connection between them, using it as a conduit to spread. Another pulse hit. Elara screamed. Kael's vision went white. He felt his wolf surge forward, trying to fight back, trying to protect them both. It wasn't enough. The power kept growing. "There has to be something," Elara gasped. "Some way to—" Then she stopped. Her eyes went distant, unfocused, like she was listening to something Kael couldn't hear. "Elara?" "The voice," she whispered. "From the ritual. It's back." "What voice?" "The one that told me to find the center. It's—" She grabbed his hand. "It's saying we're doing it wrong, fighting the power instead of—" Another surge cut her off. Kael felt his ribs crack under the pressure, tasted blood. "Instead of what?" he managed. "Instead of becoming it." The words hung in the air between them. "That's insane," Kael said. "Is it?" Elara's eyes cleared, focused on his. The Shadowborn weren't destroyed because they were powerful. They were destroyed because they fought what they were, tried to contain it instead of accepting it. "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Her voice was certain now, steady. "I can feel it. The power isn't trying to destroy me. It's trying to wake me up. Make me into what I'm supposed to be." "And what's that?" "I don't know, but I know fighting it is killing us both." Kael stared at her. She was right. He could feel it too. The more they resisted, the worse it got. Like trying to hold back a flood with their bare hands. "If you're wrong," he said quietly, "we both die. If I'm right, we both live." Elara's hand tightened on his. "I need you to trust me." "I barely know you." "Then trust the binding. Trust what you feel when you look at me. Kael looked, saw a girl who'd been humiliated and claimed and bound to something she didn't understand and was still fighting, still refusing to give up. Saw someone strong enough to face an ancient power that had destroyed cities and brave enough to suggest they stop running from it. Saw someone who mattered. "Okay," he said. "Tell me what to do." Relief flooded through the binding. Stop fighting. Stop trying to contain the power. Just let it be. That's it? That's it. Kael wanted to argue. Wanted to say that letting ancient, destructive power run wild was a terrible idea. But another pulse hit, and he felt something in his chest crack. They were out of time. "Together?" he asked. "Together." They locked eyes and let go. The power exploded, not outward this time, inward, flooding through them both with the force of a tidal wave. Kael felt his wolf howl, felt every instinct he had scream at him to fight, to resist, to protect. He ignored it, let the power wash over him, through him. Let it fill every empty space until there was nothing left but that burning, ancient force. Beside him, Elara did the same. The binding between them flared white-hot, and something shifted. The power stopped fighting, stopped trying to break free. Instead, it settled, like a wild animal that had finally been acknowledged instead of caged. Kael opened his eyes. The room was glowing, not with destructive light, but with something softer, steadier, like starlight made solid. Elara was staring at her hands. They were covered in that gentle glow, but she wasn't burning, wasn't breaking apart. "It worked," she whispered. Kael could feel it too. The power was still there, massive, ancient, terrifying, but it wasn't consuming them anymore. It was just there, part of them, natural as breathing. "How do you feel?" he asked. Elara looked up. Her eyes had changed, still brown, but with gold threaded through them now, like veins of precious metal. "Different," she said, "like I've been asleep my whole life and I just woke up." Kael understood. He felt it too. The binding had changed, deepened. He could feel Elara's presence in his mind now, not as an intrusion, but as a constant grounding force. And the power, that ancient Shadowborn thing, was responding to both of them, balanced between them. "We should test it," Kael said. "How?" "Try to shift." Elara's expression went wary. "I told you, I can't." "You couldn't. But you're not the same person you were yesterday." She hesitated, then closed her eyes. Kael felt it through the binding, the way she reached for that place inside herself where the wolf should be. Still nothing there. But the Shadowborn power stirred. Light flared around Elara. Not violent this time, controlled, purposeful. Her form blurred and changed, not into a wolf, into something else. Something that looked like light given shape and teeth and claws. Something that existed somewhere between solid and not, real and not, animal and something far older. It lasted only a moment before Elara snapped back to human form, gasping. "What was that?" "I have no idea," Kael said honestly, "but it wasn't a wolf." "No." Elara looked down at her hands again, watching the light fade. "It was something else. Something—" The door burst open. Lyra stood in the doorway, sword drawn, eyes wild. "I felt the power surge. Are you—" She stopped, stared. "What did you do?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "We stopped fighting it," Kael said. "Stopped." Lyra looked between them, her expression shifting from alarm to something close to horror. "You accepted it? Fully? Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "Saved our lives," Elara said quietly. "Or doomed everyone else." Lyra's hand tightened on her sword. The Shadowborn who accepted their power were the ones who destroyed cities, the ones who went mad with it. "I'm not mad," Elara said. "Not yet." The words hung heavy in the air. Marcus appeared behind Lyra, breathing hard. "Your Majesty, the scholars are demanding to see you. They felt the surge. They're saying—" He stopped, seeing Elara. What happened to her eyes? Kael stepped between them and Elara. "Nothing happened. She's fine." "She's glowing." "I said she's fine." Marcus and Lyra exchanged glances. "With respect," Marcus said carefully, She doesn't look fine, and the council is already in an uproar. If they find out you've fully activated the Shadowborn power, then they find out, Kael said flatly. I'm not hiding what she is. You should, Lyra said, because the moment they know, they'll demand action, and you can't protect her from the entire council. Watch me. Kael, enough. Kael's voice went hard. I'm not discussing this. Elara is under my protection. The binding is complete, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. He could feel Elara behind him, her presence steady in his mind. Could feel her gratitude mixed with fear, mixed with something that might have been hope. The council meets at dawn, Lyra said finally. They'll want answers. Then I'll give them answers. And if they demand she be locked up, studied, executed, then they'll be disappointed. Lyra shook her head. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. She left, Marcus trailing after her. When the door closed, Elara let out a shaky breath. They're afraid of me, she said. Yes. You're not. Kael turned to face her. I'm terrified, but not of you. Of what might happen if we can't figure this out. We will. Elara's voice was more confident than her expression. We have to. A soft knock interrupted them. Come in, Kael called. Helena entered, looking worried. Your Majesty, there's someone here to see Miss Veyne. She says she's family. Elara went very still. Who? A Lady Veyne. Your mother, I believe. The color drained from Elara's face. Kael felt her panic spike through the binding. You don't have to see her. Yes, I do. Elara's hands curled into fists. If she came all the way here, something's wrong. Then I'm coming with you. You don't have to. I'm coming with you, Kael repeated, non-negotiable. Elara studied him for a moment, then nodded. They found Lady Veyne in one of the smaller receiving rooms, pacing like a caged animal. She was tall and elegant, with the same sharp cheekbones as Elara, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. Her hair was pulled back severely, and she wore traveling clothes that suggested she'd ridden hard to get here. When she saw Elara, she stopped. You're alive, she said. Not hello. Not are you okay. Just that flat statement of fact. Yes, Elara said. Lady Veyne's eyes flickered to Kael, then back to her daughter. What have you done? What do you mean? I can see it. The change. You've awakened the bloodline. Lady Veyne's voice was tight. How? The binding ritual. We had to... You had to do nothing. Lady Veyne's composure cracked. Do you have any idea what you've done? What you've become? I'm still your daughter. You're Shadowborn now, fully. There's no going back from that. I know. Do you? Lady Veyne stepped closer. Do you know what it means? What it costs? Elara lifted her chin. Why don't you tell me? Since you've been keeping it secret my entire life. The accusation hung between them. Lady Veyne looked away. I was protecting you. By letting me think I was broken? By letting everyone treat me like a mistake? Better that than dead. Lady Veyne's voice broke. The Shadowborn are hunted. Have been for 300 years. I thought if you never awakened, if you could just live as half-blood, you'd be safe. Safe? Elara's laugh was bitter. I've never been safe. I've been humiliated and rejected and treated like something wrong since I was 13. And you knew. You knew what I was and you let me suffer anyway. I was trying to save your life. You were trying to save yourself from having to face what you are. The words landed like a slap. Lady Veyne went very still. What did you say? You're Shadowborn too, Elara said quietly. That's why you never shift, why you've been hiding all these years. You awakened your power, and it terrified you, so you buried it, pretended to be something else. And when you had a daughter who showed signs of the same thing, you did the same to her. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Elara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Tell me why you abandoned me to figure this out alone. Tell me why you're here now, when it's too late to matter. Lady Veyne's shoulders sagged. She suddenly looked much older. I'm here, she said quietly, because your sister sent word that you'd bonded with the Alpha King, and I knew what that meant, that you'd awakened. She met Elara's eyes. I came to warn you, To tell you what I never could before. Tell me what? That the power isn't stable, that it grows until it consumes you, that every Shadowborn who's ever lived has eventually lost control. Lady Veyne's voice shook. That I've been fighting it for 30 years, and I'm losing. The room went silent. Kael felt Elara's shock through the binding, her fear. How long? Elara asked. Until I lose control completely? Months. Maybe less. Lady Veyne's hands were trembling. I came to tell you to run, to break the binding while you still can, to hide somewhere the power can't hurt anyone when it finally breaks free. I'm not running. You have to. No. Elara's voice was firm. I spent 23 years running from what I am. I'm done. Then you'll destroy everything you touch. Maybe. Or maybe I'll find a way to control it that you never did. Lady Veyne stared at her daughter. You sound so certain. I'm not. But I'm not facing this alone. Elara glanced at Kael. And I'm not going to let fear make my decisions anymore. Something shifted in Lady Veyne's expression, pride mixed with sorrow. You're braver than I ever was, she said quietly. I learned it from watching you survive, Elara said. Even if you didn't think I noticed. Lady Veyne's composure finally broke. She pulled Elara into a fierce embrace. Kael felt emotions flood through the binding. Relief and anger and love and grief all tangled together. When they finally separated, Lady Veyne's eyes were wet. If you're determined to do this, she said, then at least let me help. I don't know how to control it, but I know how it works, how it thinks. That's more than the scholars can offer. You'll stay? Elara asked. For as long as I can. Lady Veyne's smile was sad. Before my own power breaks free, and I have to go where it can't hurt anyone. We'll figure it out, Elara said. For both of us. I hope you're right. The council meeting at dawn was exactly as hostile as Kael expected. All 12 alphas were present, along with Lyra and the 3 scholars. They'd set up in the Great Hall this time, a massive room designed to hold hundreds, now holding only a handful of people whose combined power could level mountains. Kael stood at the front, Elara beside him. He could feel the council's fear, their anger, their absolute certainty that he'd made a catastrophic mistake. Your Majesty. Lord Cassian spoke first, as always. We've heard disturbing reports about the ritual, about what happened afterward. Then you've heard correctly, Kael said. You completed the binding. Yes. And activated the Shadowborn power fully. Yes! The room erupted in shouts. Kael let them yell for 30 seconds, then released just enough of his aura to make them all shut up. One at a time, he said calmly. You've doomed us all, Lady Morgrave said flatly. The Shadowborn destroyed entire territories the last time they were fully awakened, and you've created one deliberately. I've created nothing. Elara is what she's always been. We've just stopped pretending otherwise. She's dangerous. So am I, Kael interrupted. So are all of you. Power is always dangerous. The question is whether we learn to control it or let fear control us. Flowery words won't change reality, Lord Brennan said. The Shadowborn are unstable. They lose control. They destroy. Some did. Elara spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet but carried. But not all. The scholars said the Shadowborn were hunted to extinction, but if they all lost control and destroyed cities, why did they need to be hunted? Wouldn't they have destroyed themselves? The question hung in the air. Scholar Miriam stood. The records indicate... The records were written by the victors, Elara interrupted. By the wolves who hunted my ancestors. Of course they make it sound like the Shadowborn were all monsters. It justified the genocide. That's speculation, Thorne said. Is it? Elara's eyes flashed with that gold thread. Or is it truth you don't want to acknowledge? That maybe the Shadowborn were destroyed not because they were dangerous, but because they were different. Because their power couldn't be controlled by wolves. Because they threatened the established order. The scholars exchanged glances. Even if that's true, Aldrich said carefully, it doesn't change the fact that your power is unstable, growing. We've measured it. At the current rate is slowing, Kael said. Since we stopped fighting it and started working with it, the growth has stabilized. For now, but no buts. Kael's voice went hard. We're done debating this. Elara stays. She's under my protection. The binding is complete, and if anyone in this council has a problem with that, he let his aura fill the room. Challenge me for it, right here, right now. No one moved. No one was stupid enough to challenge an Alpha King who just bound himself to ancient power. I thought not, Kael said. This meeting is over. Wait. A new voice. Everyone turned. A man stood at the entrance to the great hall, old, dressed in robes that looked older, leaning on a staff carved with symbols that made Elara's power stir in recognition. Who are you? Kael demanded. Someone who knows more about the Shadowborn than anyone in this room. The old man walked forward slowly. And I'm here to tell you that you're all wrong. He stopped in front of Elara, studied her with eyes that were the same gold-threaded brown as hers. You're not a threat, he said quietly. You're a solution. To what? Elara asked. To a problem 300 years old. To a power vacuum that's been growing since the Shadowborn were destroyed. To an imbalance in the territories that we've been trying to fix with laws and treaties when what we needed, he smiled, was one of you. Explain, Kael said. The old man turned to address the council. The Shadowborn weren't just powerful. They were balancers. They could sense when power was being abused, when territories were being destroyed by alpha conflicts. They could intervene, stop wars before they started, heal rifts that would have torn us apart. The records say nothing about this, Miriam protested. The records were written to justify their extinction. Of course, they don't mention the good they did. The old man's expression hardened. But I remember. I'm old enough to remember the last Shadowborn, old enough to know what we lost when we killed them all. Who are you? Lady Morgrave demanded. My name is Theron Shadowborn. He looked at Elara. And I'm your great-grandfather. The silence that followed could have crushed stone. Elara stared at him. That's impossible. The Shadowborn are extinct. Most are. I've been in hiding for 300 years, waiting. Theron's smile was sad. Waiting for someone strong enough to survive the awakening. Someone brave enough to accept what they are, instead of running from it. Waiting for me? Waiting for you. Kael felt hope surge through the binding. Felt Elara's desperate need to believe this wasn't just another trick. If you're really Shadowborn, Lord Cassian said slowly, prove it. Theron didn't hesitate. He raised his hand. Light poured from his palm, the same golden glow that came from Elara, but older, steadier, controlled with the ease of 3 centuries of practice. The council recoiled. I'm Shadowborn, Theron said calmly, and I can teach her what I know, how to control the power, how to use it properly, how to become what the territories need instead of what they fear. Why should we trust you, Lyra demanded. Because you don't have a choice. Theron's eyes swept the council. The power is awake. The binding is complete. You can either help her learn to control it, or you can watch her lose control and destroy everything. Those are your options. He turned back to Elara. What do you say? He asked quietly. Will you let me teach you? Elara looked at Kael. He felt her question through the binding. Do you trust him? I don't know. But we need help. She turned back to Theron. If I agree, if I learn from you, what happens? You become what you were meant to be. A bridge between wolves and something older. A force that can stabilize the territories instead of destroying them. Theron's expression was serious. But I won't lie to you. The training will be hard, dangerous. You might not survive it. And if I don't train, you definitely won't survive. The power will consume you within weeks. Elara took a breath, let it out slowly. Then I don't have much choice, do I? We always have choices, Theron said. The question is whether we have the courage to make the hard ones. Elara straightened her shoulders. When do we start? Now. Theron turned to the council. I'll need access to the old archives, the ones you've kept sealed because they contain knowledge of the Shadowborn, and I'll need space, somewhere I can train her without interruption. Absolutely not, Lord Cassian sputtered. We can't just— Yes, you can, Kael said. Give him what he needs. Your Majesty, you, give him what he needs. Kael's voice left no room for argument, unless you prefer to keep debating while the power grows unchecked. The council looked at each other, at Theron, at Elara standing there with light threading through her veins. Finally, Lady Morgrave nodded. Fine, but she's monitored at all times. Agreed, Theron said. Transparency is important. You should see what she's learning, what she's becoming. He held out his hand to Elara. She took it, and Kael felt it through the binding, the moment when power recognized power. When 300 years of isolation met the next generation, when the last Shadowborn found the one who might finally be strong enough to restore what was lost. This won't be easy, Theron warned. Nothing worth doing ever is, Elara said. Theron's smile widened. You sound like your great-grandmother. She was stubborn too. Good, Elara said. I'll need all the stubbornness I can get. As they left the Great Hall, Kael walking beside her, council members whispering behind them, Elara felt something shift. For 23 years she'd been running, hiding, trying to be something she wasn't. But standing here with ancient power humming in her veins, and a great-grandfather she didn't know existed offering to teach her how to use it, she felt for the first time in her life like she might actually belong somewhere, not as someone's mistake, as herself. The council didn't trust her yet. The territories would fear her. There would be challenges and tests and people waiting for her to fail. But she had Kael, had the binding, had Theron's knowledge and her mother's cautious support, had herself, finally, without apology or shame. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was a beginning, and sometimes that was enough. The training grounds Theron chose were older than the palace itself, a clearing carved into the mountainside surrounded by standing stones that hummed with residual power from centuries past. The air tasted different here, sharper, heavier, like breathing in history. Elara stood in the center while Theron walked the perimeter, examining the stones with an expression that was part nostalgia, part grief. My grandfather built this place, he said quietly, back when Shadowborn weren't something to be feared, when we were just another part of the natural order. What changed? Elara asked. Power always changes things. Some wolves decided they didn't like sharing territory with beings who could match their strength, so they started whispering, started spreading stories about how dangerous we were, how unstable. Theron touched one of the stones, and it glowed faintly under his palm. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late. The hunt had begun. Kael leaned against the entrance, arms crossed, watching. The binding hummed between them, steady now, controlled but still present. Still connecting them in ways Elara was only beginning to understand. How many survived? She asked. 3 families, mine, 2 others. Theron's voice went flat. The hunters got the other 2. I'm all that's left. And my mother? Your grandmother was my daughter. She died in the last hunt when your mother was just a child. Your mother was raised by wolves, never knowing what she really was until she awakened at 16. Theron turned to face Elara. She's been running ever since, hiding, terrified of what she is. She came here, Elara said, to warn me, which means she still has hope. Even after 30 years of fear, she still believes there might be another way. Theron's expression softened. That's something. Will she lose control? Eventually, everyone does, if they don't learn to work with the power instead of against it. Can you teach her too? Theron was quiet for a moment. If she'll let me. But she's been fighting herself for so long, I don't know if she can unlearn that fear. Elara thought about her mother, about all those years of watching her stay silent while Celeste and the others mocked Elara's inability to shift. All those carefully neutral expressions when people asked why Lady Veyne's daughter was so wrong. Not cruelty. Fear. Fear of being recognized, fear of being hunted, fear of passing that same fate to her daughter. I want to try, Elara said, to help her. Then we'll start with you. And if you succeed, if you can prove that the Shadowborn power can be controlled, can be useful, maybe she'll believe it's possible for her too. Theron moved to the center of the clearing, gestured for Elara to join him. The first thing you need to understand, he said, is that the power isn't separate from you. It's not some foreign thing that invaded your body. It's you, the truest version of you. That's what it said during the ritual, Elara said. The voice. It told me to stop fighting. Smart voice. Theron smiled slightly. Most Shadowborn spend so much time trying to cage their power that they never learn to actually use it. They treat it like a wild animal that needs to be locked up. But you can't cage yourself. You can only learn to move through the world as what you really are. And what am I? Show me. Elara hesitated, then closed her eyes and reached for that place inside her chest where the power lived. It responded immediately, eagerly. Light bloomed around her hands, golden and warm. Good, Theron said. Now push it further. Let it spread. Elara did. The light climbed up her arms, across her shoulders, down her spine. More. She pushed harder. The light covered her completely, pouring from her skin like she was made of sunlight. Now shift. I can't. Not into a wolf. Into what you are. Elara remembered that moment in her room, when she'd tried and briefly become something else, something that existed between forms. She reached for that same place. The world blurred. Her body changed, not violently, not painfully, just changed, like water taking a new shape. When the light faded, she wasn't human anymore. But she wasn't quite anything else either. She existed somewhere between solid and not, between real and something older. Her form seemed to shift when you looked at it directly, sometimes appearing almost human, sometimes something with too many angles and edges made of light. There you are, Theron said softly. Elara looked down at herself, at hands that were and weren't hands, at a body that felt both more and less real than it had a moment ago. What am I? Her voice came out wrong, layered, like multiple versions of herself speaking at once. You're Shadowborn. This is what we look like when we stop pretending to be something else. It's beautiful, Kael said from the entrance. Elara turned. Through whatever senses she had in this form, she could feel him more clearly, could feel the binding between them glowing like a physical thread, and she could feel something else, something vast and ancient waking up in the mountains around them, responding to her presence. What is that? She asked. The old power, Theron said. The territories remember what Shadowborn were, what we did. When one of us shifts, the land itself takes notice. Is that dangerous? Depends. Can you control it? I don't know. Then let's find out. Theron shifted. His transformation was smoother than Elara's, practiced over centuries. He became the same sort of in-between thing, light and shadow and something that hurt to look at directly. The power responds to intention, he said. You tell it what you want, and it makes it happen. Watch. He raised a hand. The ground beneath their feet trembled, then smoothed out, reshaping itself into a perfect circle. Your turn, he said. Change something. Anything. Elara looked around, focused on one of the standing stones. Move, she thought. The stone slid sideways 3 feet. Good. Now put it back. She did. The stone returned to its original position like it had never moved. Healing, Theron said. That's what Shadowborn do best. We can sense when things are wrong, when power is unbalanced, when territories are sick, when conflicts are about to explode. And we can fix them. How? By becoming what's needed in that moment. The power adapts, responds. If what's needed is strength, you become strong. If it's wisdom, you become wise. If it's a bridge between two enemies, you become that bridge. Elara felt the power humming inside her, eager to try. But, Theron's voice went serious, if you lose yourself in it, if you forget that you're guiding the power instead of becoming it, you'll be consumed. That's when Shadowborn go mad, when they let the power make all their choices. How do I stop that from happening? Theron gestured at Kael. Him, the binding, that's your anchor. As long as you stay connected to something real, something outside the power, you can't be fully consumed. Through the binding, Elara felt Kael's steady presence, his certainty, his absolute refusal to let her go. It grounded her, kept her from drifting too far into the power's endless possibilities. Shift back, Theron instructed. Elara pulled the power in, let herself become human again. The transition was easier this time, smoother. When she opened her eyes, she was standing in the clearing, breathing hard but intact. How do you feel? Theron asked. Like I just ran a marathon, but also, she searched for the words. Like I finally understand what I'm supposed to be doing. Good, because we're going to do it again, every day, until shifting becomes as natural as breathing. Hooked. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of training until Elara's body ached, and her mind felt stretched thin. 3 weeks of learning to shift, to control, to work with power that still scared her but no longer consumed her. 3 weeks of the council watching from a distance, their fear slowly shifting into something that might have been grudging respect. And 3 weeks of feeling the territories themselves respond to her presence. The first time it happened, Elara had been training in her shifted form when she felt it, a wrongness in the Eastern Territory. A conflict brewing between two packs over hunting grounds. She'd mentioned it to Theron. 2 days later, Marcus reported that the conflict had been resolved. The packs had reached an agreement seemingly overnight, both sides claiming they just understood what needed to happen. "You did that," Theron said. "The power sensed the conflict and fixed it. Through you. But I didn't do anything. You existed. Sometimes that's enough." It kept happening. Small conflicts resolving themselves. Sick territories healing. Power imbalances correcting. The council noticed. "She's influencing things," Lord Cassian said during one of the increasingly frequent meetings. He didn't sound angry anymore, just bewildered. "Not through force, through presence. That's what Shadowborn do," Theron explained patiently. "We're balancers. The territories naturally stabilize around us. But she's not trying to control anything," Lady Morgrave pointed out. "She's just training." "Exactly. If she were trying to control things, it wouldn't work. The power responds to genuine intention, to truth. You can't fake it." Kael stood beside Elara during these meetings, their binding a constant reminder that she wasn't alone. He'd been training too. Learning how to work with the connection between them. Learning that his wolf could draw strength from her Shadowborn power without being overwhelmed by it. Together, they were becoming something the territories had never seen before. Not just an Alpha King, not just a Shadowborn. Something new. Something that could bridge the gap between wolves and the older power. Something that scared people less the more they saw it in action. But not everyone was convinced. On the 22nd day, Celeste arrived. Elara was in the training grounds when Helena found her. "Miss Veyne, you have a visitor." "Who?" "Your sister." Elara's stomach dropped. "I don't want to see her. She's insisting, says it's important." Elara looked at Theron. He nodded. "Go, face this. You need to." So Elara went. She found Celeste in the same receiving room where her mother had waited weeks ago. But where Lady Veyne had been pacing with worry, Celeste stood perfectly still, perfectly composed, looking like she'd just stepped out of a portrait. "Elara." Her voice was carefully neutral. "What do you want?" "To talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "Don't we?" Celeste turned. "You're different. Even I can see that. The way you move, the way you hold yourself. What happened to you? I stopped pretending to be something I'm not." Celeste studied her. "They're saying you're Shadowborn, that you've awakened some ancient power, that you can influence entire territories without lifting a finger." "What they're saying is true." "I don't believe it." "I don't care if you believe it." The words came out harsher than Elara intended. But she was done being gentle with people who'd spent years tearing her down. Celeste flinched. "I came to apologize." That caught Elara off guard. "What?" "For the ball, for the coins, for..." Celeste's perfect composure cracked slightly. "For everything. I was cruel. I've been cruel to you our entire lives, and I'm sorry." Elara wanted to believe her, wanted to think her sister had actually found some piece of genuine remorse, but the binding was humming a warning. Something felt wrong. "Why now?" Elara asked carefully. "Because I realized I was wrong about you. That maybe I'm useful now?" Elara's voice went flat. "That maybe having a sister who can influence territories might be politically advantageous?" Celeste's expression shuddered. "You're being unfair." "Am I? Because for 23 years you treated me like garbage, and now that I have power, suddenly you want to apologize." "I was protecting our family name. By humiliating me in front of 300 people? By standing there while they threw coins at me like I was something to be bought?" Elara stepped closer. "You weren't protecting anything. You were saving yourself from being associated with the failure." "That's not..." "Yes, it is." Elara's hands were starting to glow. She forced the power down. "You want to know what I am now? I'm everything you tried to make me believe I wasn't. I'm powerful. I'm necessary. I'm someone the territories need, and I did it without you, without your approval, without any of the things you said I'd never have. Celeste's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Can you forgive me? Elara looked at her sister, at the perfect hair and perfect dress and perfect mask that was finally starting to crack. And she felt nothing. Not anger, not hatred, not even satisfaction. Just a vast, empty indifference. I don't forgive you, Elara said quietly. But I don't hate you either. You're just not important to me anymore. The words landed like physical blows. Celeste took a step back. Elara, go home, Celeste. Go back to your perfect life with your perfect wolf and your perfect reputation. I'm done caring what you think of me. But we're family. Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't stand by while someone they love is destroyed. Elara moved toward the door. I have a new family now, one that actually sees me, and that's enough. She left Celeste standing there, perfectly still, perfectly alone. Outside the room, Kael was waiting. I heard, he said, through the binding and through the wall. You weren't exactly quiet. Elara laughed. It came out shakier than she'd intended. Did I handle that wrong? No, you handled it perfectly. It doesn't feel perfect. Because you're human. Humans feel messy things even when they make the right choice. Kael pulled her into his arms. But you did the right thing. She doesn't deserve your forgiveness until she earns it, if she ever does. Elara leaned into him, feeling his heartbeat sync with hers through the binding. Is it always going to be like this? She asked. People from my old life showing up and reminding me of who I used to be? Probably. But you're not who you used to be anymore. And eventually, they'll figure that out. The crisis came on the 30th day. Elara felt it before anyone else. A massive distortion in the Eastern Territories. Power spiking out of control. Violence erupting in 3 different packs simultaneously. She found Theron in the library. Something's wrong. He looked up from an ancient text. What do you feel? The territories, they're screaming. Something's making them sick. Theron stood immediately. Show me. They rushed to the council chamber where Kael was already meeting with Marcus and Lyra. Reports just came in, Marcus was saying. 3 packs fighting. No one knows why. They just started attacking each other like... He stopped when he saw Elara. Like something broke, Elara finished. I can feel it. The balance is wrong. Someone's forcing the territories out of alignment. Who? Kael demanded. Elara closed her eyes. Let her power spread. Felt for the source of the distortion. Found it. Someone with old power. Really old. It feels like Shadowborn, Theron said grimly. But not you, not me. Mother, Elara whispered. She's losing control. Kael was already moving. Where is she? Eastern Territory, right in the middle of the conflict. Elara grabbed his arm. Kael, if she's lost control completely, she'll destroy everything around her. Thousands of wolves will die. Then we stop her. How? I don't know how to... Yes, you do, Theron said. You've been training for this. You can heal what's broken, including her. I've never done anything on this scale. Then it's time to find out if you can. They rode hard through the night, Kael's personal guard flanking them. By the time they reached the Eastern Territories, the fighting had spread. Wolves tearing at each other, their eyes wild, their movements frantic. Not strategic combat, pure chaos. And at the center of it all, Lady Veyne. She was in her Shadowborn form, light and shadow twisted together in ways that hurt to see. Power poured from her in waves, distorting reality itself. Mother! Elara shouted. Lady Veyne turned. In this form, she didn't look human anymore. She looked like something ancient and broken and absolutely consumed by power. Elara! The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Run, please! I can't stop it! Another wave of power exploded outward. More wolves collapsed, screaming. Elara shifted. The transformation came instantly now, natural as breathing. She became that in-between thing, light and presence and purpose. And she stepped into the chaos. The power hit her like a physical force. Lady Veyne's Shadowborn energy, wild and desperate and trying to destroy everything it touched. Elara pushed back, not with force, with presence, with the calm certainty that she'd spent 30 days learning to cultivate. "Mother, listen to me," she said, her voice carrying through the chaos. "You're not lost. You're just scared. I can't control it because you're still fighting it, still trying to cage it instead of working with it. I've tried." "No, you've been running for 30 years. You've never actually tried." Elara moved closer, power flowing around her. "But I'm here now, and I can show you how." She reached out. Lady Veyne's power lashed at her, trying to push her away. Elara didn't retreat. She let the power wash over her, through her, and channeled it into the binding. Kael was there instantly, his strength anchoring her, his wolf lending her stability. Together, they became a conduit, taking Lady Veyne's wild, destructive power and reshaping it, grounding it, giving it purpose instead of just chaos. "Feel this," Elara said. "Feel how it's supposed to work. Not caged, not wild, just balanced." Slowly, impossibly, Lady Veyne's power began to shift. The violent pulses smoothed out. The distortion in the territories eased, and Lady Veyne collapsed. Elara caught her, pulled her into human form. Her mother looked 20 years older, exhausted, broken, but alive. "How?" Lady Veyne gasped. "I stopped running," Elara said simply. "And I found people who helped me learn to stand still." Around them, the fighting was stopping. Wolves shaking off the influence, looking confused and horrified at what they'd just done. The territories themselves were settling, healing, responding to the Shadowborn presence that was finally working with them instead of against them. Theron appeared at Elara's shoulder. "Well done." "I didn't do it alone." "No, but you led. That's what matters." "Done." The council meeting 3 days later was different. For the first time, there was no hostility, no fear, just careful, grudging respect. "You saved 3 packs," Lord Cassian said. "Stopped a war before it could really start. And you healed a Shadowborn who'd been losing control for decades." "I stabilized her," Elara corrected. "She still has work to do, but she's learning. Theron's teaching her the same way he taught me." "The Eastern Territories are reporting unprecedented stability," Lady Morgrave added. "Conflicts resolving themselves. Power balancing naturally. It's like the land itself is healthier." "Because it is," Theron said. "That's what happens when Shadowborn are allowed to exist. When they're not hunted or hidden or forced to fight themselves. They make everything around them better." "So what now?" Lord Brennan asked. "Do we just accept this? Accept her?" "You don't have to accept anything," Kael said. "But you do have to acknowledge reality. Elara is Shadowborn. She's bonded to me. And she's helping the territories in ways none of us could. But what's to stop her from losing control? From becoming what her mother almost became? Me," Kael said simply. "The binding. Her training. Her choice to keep learning instead of assuming she knows everything." He looked at Elara. "And her fundamental decency, which is worth more than all the power in the world." The council was quiet. Finally, Aldrich spoke. "We've been studying the old texts, the real ones, not the propaganda written after the hunts. And we've found something." He opened a massive book, pointed to a passage. "The Shadowborn weren't just tolerated in the old days, they were essential. They were the ones who kept the territories from tearing themselves apart, who stopped power-hungry alphas from destroying everything, who made sure the natural order was maintained. And when they were hunted to extinction," Miriam continued, "everything became unstable. Wars lasted longer. Territories degraded. The balance was lost. We've been trying to fix that balance for 300 years, Thorne finished, with laws and treaties and councils, but what we really needed was one of them," Lady Morgrave said quietly, "was her." Elara felt the weight of their stares. Not fear anymore, not disgust, recognition. "I'm not asking to be worshipped," she said, "or to be in charge. I just want to be allowed to exist, to help when I can, to learn when I can't, to be part of this instead of something separate from it." "That's all?" Lord Cassian asked. "That's everything." The council looked at each other. Then one by one, they nodded. "Very well," Lord Cassian said. The council recognizes Elara Veyne Shadowborn as, what do we call you? What's your title? Elara thought about who she'd been. The unwanted daughter, the half-blood mistake, the girl everyone had tried to price with coins on a marble floor. And who she was now, Shadowborn, bonded, essential. I don't need a title, she said. Just call me Elara. That's enough. Kael's hand found hers. The binding pulsed between them, warm and steady. Then let it be known, Lord Cassian said formally, that Elara Veyne Shadowborn is recognized by this council, and that any who harm her or attempt to remove her will answer to the Alpha King. And to me, Theron added, since I'm apparently not extinct anymore. Scattered laughter broke the tension. The meeting adjourned. As people filed out, Lyra stopped beside Elara. I was wrong about you, she said bluntly. I know. I thought you were dangerous. I was right. You are dangerous. But not the way I thought. What way then? You're dangerous to everything that's been broken for 300 years. To every comfortable lie we've been telling ourselves about how things have to be. Lyra's smile was sharp. I like it. She walked away. Kael pulled Elara close. How does it feel to be recognized? Strange. Good. Terrifying. Elara leaned into him. Like I might actually get to build a life now instead of just surviving. You will. We both will. They walked out together into sunlight that felt different now. Warmer. Like the world itself was welcoming instead of hostile. Quote. 6 months later, Elara stood in the same grand hall where the midsummer ball had destroyed her old life. But this time was different. This time she wore robes of deep gold edged with silver, the formal dress of a Shadowborn in their true role. This time her mother stood beside her, healthy and stable, teaching other half-bloods how to work with their power instead of fighting it. This time, Theron was addressing the assembled nobles, explaining what the Shadowborn really were. What they'd been before fear and propaganda had twisted the truth. And this time, when Elara walked through the crowd, people didn't laugh. They bowed. Not because she demanded it, but because they'd seen what she could do, how she'd stopped a war, how she'd healed territories that had been sick for generations, how she'd proven that being different didn't mean being wrong. Kael stood at the front, watching her approach. The binding between them was stronger now, deeper. No longer just a connection, but a partnership, a choice they both made every day. When Elara reached him, he held out his hand. She took it, and felt nothing but warmth, certainty, home. Ready? He asked quietly. For what? Everything. Elara looked out at the assembled crowd, at nobles who'd mocked her 6 months ago and now studied her with careful respect, at wolves who'd thought her broken and now knew she was something else entirely, at a world that was slowly, painfully, learning to make room for things it didn't understand. She thought about the girl she'd been, standing in golden light while they threw coins at her feet, believing she was unwanted, broken, wrong, and she thought about who she'd become. Not perfect, not without fear or doubt or moments of absolute terror, but real, present, essential. She thought about all the other half-bloods out there, hiding and scared and believing they were mistakes, and she made a choice. I'm ready, she said. Kael smiled. Then let's begin. They turned to face the crowd together, and Elara started talking, not about power or politics or fear, about truth, about how being different wasn't the same as being wrong, about how the things that made you feel broken were often the things that made you whole, about how the world's fear didn't define your worth, only you got to decide that, about how she'd stood on a marble floor surrounded by coins and cruelty, and instead of breaking, she'd chosen to become something new, something the territories needed, something that shouldn't exist but did anyway, and about how anyone listening, anyone who'd ever felt unwanted or wrong or like they didn't belong, could make the same choice. To stop running, to stop hiding, to exist loudly and unapologetically, and let the world learn to make room. The speech wasn't perfect. Elara stumbled over words, lost her train of thought twice, and probably said things that would make the scholars cringe. But it was real. And when she finished, the silence that followed wasn't the hostile kind. It was the kind that said people were thinking, reconsidering, maybe, just maybe, starting to understand. Then someone started clapping. Lady Veyne, standing at the edge of the crowd, tears on her face. Others joined, slowly at first, then building. Not everyone. Some nobles still looked skeptical. Some wolves still radiated distrust. But enough. Enough to matter. Enough to be a beginning. Kael's hand tightened on hers. Through the binding, she felt his pride, his certainty that she'd just changed something fundamental. "Well done," he murmured. "I just told the truth." Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. As the crowd dispersed, as nobles went back to their political scheming and wolves went back to their territories, Elara felt something shift, not in the world, in herself. For 23 years, she'd been carrying the weight of other people's judgment, their fear, their certainty that she was less. But standing here, with Kael beside her and her mother watching with quiet pride, and Theron nodding approval from the shadows, she realized she didn't have to carry that weight anymore. Didn't have to prove herself to people who'd decided who she was before they ever met her. Didn't have to be anything except exactly what she was. Shadowborn, bonded, alive. Not despite being different. Because of it. That night, Elara stood at her window, watching the mountains catch the last rays of sunset. Kael appeared behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how far we've come. About that night at the ball when everything fell apart." "Regret it?" Elara thought about it. About the humiliation, the pain, the fear. About everything that came after. "No," she said finally. "Because if it hadn't happened, if you hadn't claimed me, if we hadn't done the binding, if I hadn't awakened, I'd still be pretending to be something I'm not. Still letting fear make all my choices. And now? Now I get to choose every day who I am, what I do with this power, how I move through the world." She turned in his arms. "That's worth all of it." Kael kissed her, soft and certain and real. "I love you," he said. The words should have been terrifying. They'd known each other for 6 months, had been bound for less. But through the binding, Elara could feel the truth of them, could feel how he'd meant them for weeks now, just hadn't found the words. "I love you too," she said, and meant it. Not the desperate, clinging kind of love born from fear or need, the steady, chosen kind. The kind that said, "I see all of you, and I'm staying anyway." They stood there as darkness fell, two people who shouldn't exist bound together by something the world was never meant to survive. But they had survived. More than that, they'd thrived. And somewhere in the territories, other half-bloods were hearing Elara's story. Were starting to believe that maybe they weren't mistakes after all. Were learning that the things that made them different were the things that made them necessary. The change wouldn't happen overnight. Fear never disappeared that easily. But it was happening, one person at a time, one choice at a time, one truth at a time. And that was enough. It had to be. Because the alternative, the silence, the hiding, the endless running from what you really were, that wasn't survival. That was just a slower kind of dying. Elara had spent 23 years dying slowly. Now she was finally, fully, impossibly alive. And she wasn't apologizing for it anymore. Not to the council. Not to her old family. Not to anyone who thought she should be less than what she was. She was Shadowborn. She was bonded. She was necessary. And the world would just have to learn to survive it.